My name is Neil Brownlee. I'm the head of business events at Visit Scotland, and I'm joined by Aileen Crawford, head of Glasgow Convention Bureau, head of Glasgow really, and Kathleen Warden from the Scottish Event Campus, celebrating its 40th year. I said I wasn't going to date stamp it that way, but I just have. Never mind. We are here now to welcome two esteemed clients from the great world of business events. Lauren Parr from Optica, and Marie Hunter from IEEE. If we could very quickly ask you each to introduce yourselves and just tell us a bit more about your organisation, just 10, 15 seconds, and where you're joining us from today, that'd be wonderful. Let's start with Marie.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. My name is Marie Hunter, and I'm the Managing Director of Conferences, Events, and Experiences for the IEEE. And the IEEE is the world's largest association for technical engineers, and we conduct over 2,300 events each year. So I'm honored to be here to talk with some of our great friends in Scotland.
Thank you, Marie. And Lauren, I had the pleasure of serving with you on the PCMA Board of Directors. So tell us more about where you are now, where you're joining us from.
So I am the Chief Meetings and Exhibits Officer for Optica. I've been here for about a year now. We're based in Washington, D.C., but we're a global organization. So we have staff in Europe as well. And we have a portfolio of events ranging from maybe 40 or 50 people to about 18,000 people. We have a lot of great crossover actually with Marie's organization, with IEEE. And optics and photonics has, it's really the science of light. So it has applications in medical, in environmental, in all kinds of technology and telecommunications, quantum, AI, all of that. So it's a terrific organization and with really fantastic and very dedicated members.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. And thanks again for finding time to join us on this, what day is it? Wednesday afternoon here in Glasgow. So we're in Glasgow, just to clarify that, the Tunnocks tea cakes. As you can see, we're just having a very informal chat here, myself, Aileen and Kathleen, and we've been talking already for about 45 minutes, but we wanted to ask you both, just from your perspective as clients, just some questions, and we want your very honest questions. This isn't just praise Glasgow and SECC in Scotland to the hilt. We want your honest feedback and commentary, which will help other clients and destinations around the world, because one of the things we've established is that every client and every destination, to a great extent, are in the same boat, because we are doing things annually. So very easy question to kick things off, and you two can jump in whenever you want. Why is doing events internationally of benefit to your communities? And now whoever wants to go first with that, why are doing events internationally of benefit to your communities or membership?
I can kick that off. I mean, like Lauren, I work for an international, it's really a charity, public charity is the way we're registered. And we have almost 500,000 members. So most of our members are outside the U.S., and it's all quite international depending on where you're sitting. So we serve really the entire world of engineering. And although we're based in New York, and our operations center is in New Jersey, we have to be very careful not to be too U.S. centric. And so it's very important for us to keep an eye on what's happening in the world, where the need is, and to show up there where the people are.
I agree with Marie. I think right now, many of us in associations, in the association space, even if we're headquartered in the United States, science and technology development and product development is a global enterprise. And there are no real borders in that kind of scientific research, and international collaborations have been around, as long as the research has been around. So for us, honoring that and honoring, making sure that we're showing up where our community is, where our members are, and that we really understand the day-to-day challenges and the long and short-term challenges and opportunities our members are facing in a very global society, that is really important to us. So we are absolutely doing business outside of the United States.
I would even add on what Lauren said, because I think she touched on a really important point, is the way that science and technology in many ways rises above whatever's happening transactionally, whatever's happening politically, and whatever the difference among peoples are, science and technology is really where some real cross-national collaboration and exchanges can occur. And that's very important to the IEEE, but also to everyone in the scientific community, not just our organization.
Yeah, I think that, that's something that we often think about here as well. Wherever you are, whichever venue, destination, country you're in, science knows no borders, knowledge knows no borders, and being able to inspire, educate, and share content, co-create content, etc., wherever you are in the world, with whomever in the world, is so fundamental and is the essence of what we do in this fascinating world of conferences and bringing people together to share knowledge. So, it makes it a very special place to be, actually.
Definitely. And I liked your point, Marie, about the fact that you're global already. And it's always that fine point of, is if something's USA-centric, it's sometimes reminding the USA or North American membership that to the rest of the world, they are global, depending on where you are in the world. So it's something we're going through slightly with an organization. I'm chair of PCMA. I'm the first ever global chair. But I sometimes delicately point out to my friends in PCMA in USA, well, in Europe, they're global. You guys are USA. You're global from the European point of view, if that makes any sense. But so it sounds like you're already doing tons of meetings overseas. But when you're going internationally or organizing one of your overseas events, what is it that you need from partners, and what are the hurdles that destination partners like Glasgow or the SEC can help with?
I would say that one of the key things that destinations can do, and certainly it's something that Glasgow does really, really well, is that connection to the local and regional community. That ability to help an organization like Optica, like IEEE, or whomever, understand who is present and really understand where Scotland is in some of those multinational collaborations. And I'll use the example when AGU was looking for a place for their ocean sciences home. Glasgow really understood Scotland's place in the multinational consortia standing and how critical marine science was for Glasgow and for Scotland. And they turned over every stone to help us find those collaborations. And the result is new partnerships for that organization, new opportunities to find new members, and to kind of increase the size of our tent, so to speak. So a destination who has the ability to see that and do that for a client is just really, really valuable. And it is something that Glasgow does really as a standout.
Yeah, I agree, Lauren. And it's really about understanding the community that you're bringing and the content that you want to amplify. And that's sort of an insight that I think Glasgow had pretty early on in this trend, let's say. A few years back, maybe it's 8 years, 9 years, I created a program called Cities We Love. And in my world, it's such a distributed system with, probably 25 or 30,000 volunteers planning events all over the world. We can't necessarily be there in the commencement of every site selection or every initiation of thought. So what we thought to do was to create a sort of like in the US, you might say a good housekeeping seal of approval, where we're spotting these various cities and convention bureaus and the like that do get it. And it's a variety of things that they bring to the table. They have great food. They espouse our values. But I think very importantly, they understand how to partner and are willing to put in a little elbow grease, not just around logistics, but about what it is you're trying to accomplish. It's a real differentiator. And of course, Glasgow is a city we love.
Aileen, does that chime with what your team see at the front end of bids and RFPs, even with renowned clients like these two? Is it something you see everywhere? It's that expectation of understanding the intentions of the client's organisation.
I hope so. And knowing Lauren and knowing Marie over the years. I think for Kathleen and I, considering that partnership approach and understanding what does success look like for you and for your delegates, for your sponsors, for your decision makers, we're all successful if we're listening to each other and working together and appreciating that this is a new destination for maybe the first local host. They might not have run a meeting before, but of course Lauren's team and Marie's team are hugely experienced and have fantastic team members. And we like to think that they don't have to jump on a plane every month to come and do the site inspection. We can help them. There's different ways of working together. And the more we know each other, it builds up that partnership. It builds up that understanding. And we're absolutely honoured and delighted to be a city that IEEE love. And the academics that we work with are fundamental in that partnership as well. And we love working with Marie's team. And we've seen a variety of team members with Lauren too. I think, Kathleen, you're the same alignment there?
Yeah, 100%. And I think it comes down to, at the very beginning of the process, when you're looking at a new opportunity, whether it's with a client that we know really well or whether it's a client that we're meeting for the first time, it's really getting under the skin at the beginning of what matters. What matters to the client? What's going to make the difference to the client? What's going to make the difference to their delegates and their sponsors and their exhibitors? And what's going to make the event help our client build that brand loyalty to them with their sponsors and exhibitors and delegates? And so early on in the process, one of the questions that our team members are asking is, what are your key objectives? What really matters to you as an organisation, as an association? What are your top priorities based on everything that is going on in your world right now? All of the challenges that you're facing, all of the opportunities that you're facing. How can we get aligned with that and get behind that and support you across all of those things or wherever we possibly can? So it comes down to that early dialogue. And of course, as you transition through a process of selecting a destination and selecting a venue, and as we transition through that process with our clients, if you've got off to a really great start, remarkable things can happen because the honesty, the openness, the trust really becomes so apparent and to the fore. And before you know it, you're motoring along and you're able to get so much more out of every relationship and every conversation. So yeah, it comes down to getting the right questions on the table at the beginning, establishing what the goals are for our associations, aligning with them, getting behind them, and just being really clear about our shared goals and objectives. And the reality is we actually all have at least one shared goal and objective, and that's for everyone to have the most remarkable time and for events to be memorable, for people to come away from having been at their event, having learned more, having made new connections, having done great business, and thoroughly looking forward to coming back to that association conference next year or the year after. So yeah, down to building the relationship and the trust.
Well, thank you, Kathleen. Here's a dangerous question I'm going to ask you, and it's dangerous for me because I work for a government agency called Visit Scotland. I head up the national remit for Scotland for business events. So I work for Aileen and Kathleen and my opposite numbers in other places. But what value can government, and when I say government, I mean national government support in your host destination do for you? When you have Aileen on board and Kathleen on board, you understand that the city and the centre totally get it. How can national government support, and in what way, and how does it add value?
For me, it's not as specific to Scotland and Glasgow as it might be to other locales, but I think fundamentally, if other folks are listening in, I think the infrastructure to do events in the country, the financial infrastructure, is it easy? How are we handling indirect tax? Are there incentives or waivers to bring business in, even at a lower level than, a huge citywide. So I think that's emerging as a big issue for us in a variety of localities due to the complexities of international banking. So any place where that can be made easier is fantastic. The other thing that I would love to see is more dialogue, perhaps even a point of contact around content. So there are so many adjacencies to government, in terms of workforce development or tech development or educational intersections. My organization is almost 500,000 engineers who are in some stage of work life. What would you like them to be working on? They're researchers. So, a real dialogue and having sort of a fast track, and not having to mine what relationships may exist within our organization to try to get to someone who's probably not the right person would be very strategic and very helpful to us, on an ongoing basis, not necessarily on a transactional basis. Because in my role, I have the wherewithal to create any event I want. If the government wanted to create an event around workforce development and tech, that's something we could partner on. So some sort of deeper strategic relationship is my main answer.
I agree with what Marie said. I think that strategic integration is really, really important. Optica, like IEEE, we are working on day-to-day issues that are helping keep cities, countries connected better. We are working in the telecom space. We are working with quantum. We are working in AI. We're working with medical imaging and environmental sensing. We would love to be able to talk at a different level about what the priorities of that regional and government are, so that we can potentially include them in those conversations. It may not be for the whole meeting. It might be for a very specific set of think tank discussions, but we do have that ability when we come. So that would be really, really fantastic for us. And I really want to echo something that Marie said about it doesn't have to be huge. A very small amount of funding, a very small amount of engagement goes a long way. So it doesn't have to be millions of euros, but it could be a small amount of money that incentivizes a group to come. And that really helps us be more cost effective. And because quite frankly, the business of meetings, we all understand inflation. We all understand what we're paying right now. So any opportunities to offset that for our members is really key and critical.
Well, that's really fascinating for me to hear, because a lot of what I do at a national level for Visit Scotland is to work with Scottish Government directorates. But a lot of it is actually keeping it to getting them to understand the potential of business events that could exist or already exist, or to Marie's point, that they could be curated by IEEE, and it's trying to get through to government. I'm not sounding very complimentary here, but it's to let them understand that we can use business events as part of their policy delivery objectives over the next 5-6 years. And these are tools as part of policy delivery, not instead of or in addition to. So they just see an ask coming down the track from me, Visit Scotland person. They're thinking, gosh, what's this chap wanting? It's Visit Scotland. It's breakfasts and bums and beds. But the fact that it's the dialogue, but it's critically it's understanding. And I think it's clear to me that it's that's the bit we're struggling to unlock. We unlock it every now and then. We have ad hoc success, whether it's getting government support. But it's fascinating for me to hear that it's smaller little bits of influence of what can make a huge difference. Which is good to know, but it reminds me of the work we still need to do. Any thoughts from the room here on that?
I think the policy-driven model that Visit Scotland that's been lauded internationally. I think your colleagues that work in other national convention bureaus are very complimentary about your connection into government, and not every national convention bureau even understands that there is a connection between the subject matter being discussed at these conferences and what they are trying to achieve with their government aims and missions. And you can see the subject matter that both Lauren and Marie are bringing to the table these are world-leading scientists that are coming up with innovations to tackle the current and future challenges. So the question is really, why would a government not want to reach out to these association experts? But it's definitely something I think Scotland has had success in, but goodness me, we should be definitely trying.
Something
trying
Sheriff Carmack says from PCMA is that government should be coming to us, not vice versa. And that's the happy moment when they start coming to us. And I think the one real big success I had was working with Lauren on getting a degree of support, and is because the person in Scottish Government in Marine Scotland, they'd attended Ocean Sciences meeting last time. So that was worth 30 meetings with different people in the halls of government. That was hallelujah. Is there anything else anyone wants to chip in on that weighty topic before we move on to something lighter?
The only thing I was going to say is it makes me think of opportunities for new events to emerge from, emerging fields of research and emerging science aspects of science where potentially city, venue, country could be working alongside, for example, an IEEE or Optica on something that is emerging and actually creating a new event, and that event can go off and move around the world, or it can stay anchored in a location. And we had experience of doing that actually 10 years ago with an event in the field of stroke and stroke care and management. And I think there's probably more opportunity for those sorts of collaborations actually to spark new groups of people coming together in new and emerging fields. Food for thought. Not always easy to do, but something for consideration.
Well, I was just going to share that one approach that I've been taking is to think outside the event that's being planned in real time. So most of our larger events are a combination of a scientific meeting and a trade show. That's our most successful model. And it's very, self-perpetuating. Right? People want to be published. This year, we're going to publish over 300,000 papers. It's enormous. I keep calling it a million minds, more than a million minds. And that's our bread and butter, so to speak, in terms of what we offer. But we want to do more. Our mission is much broader than this. So one of the things I've been doing is, while we have leaders in town, while we have luminaries, sometimes Nobel Prize winners, sometimes, CEOs of top companies, I've been curating dinners the night before that basically have nothing to do with the conference. And that's where I'm bringing in local CEOs, government, on a theme, whatever that might particularly be based on who I've gathered. And those are yielding really great relationships and dialogues. So I'd say for each dinner, there's been at least 3 outcomes, not always an event, but sometimes it's a partnership or a research collaboration on, what topics are of interest to a certain city or country. And that's how I'm exploring the periphery of my events to see what else could be done. Can we then start a small think tank type event? Maybe Lauren and I will do something together with the government of Scotland, and we'll record it and it becomes a webinar. Or maybe we'll say, hey, there's all this intersectionality going on. And it's not a scholarly publishing event, right? So I'm out there really working on this with many different cities and other organizations. And that's how we're going to grow our second portfolio of events.
I would add that we approach our kind of CEO community very similarly. There's so much corporate involvement in the products and services that optics and photonics are a part of. So it's very natural to have those kinds of great collaborative moments between academia and industry and government and funders. And that public-private partnership, I think, has been really accelerated over the past few years. So something that we're doing in Glasgow next year is bringing together our quantum community. We've had a quantum research conference for many years and well supported by the industry, but we also have a quantum summit for CEOs. Something where they can work on their networks and where they can really come together and participate in a community that says, okay, where are we going next? And there's this competitive moment, but there's also a real collaborative moment. And CEOs are very interesting to engage. I'm sure, Marie, you have many stories as well. And getting their attention and getting them to come and devote the time and attention to something, there has to be something very, very meaningful for them to make that decision. So hosting and kind of consolidating these two congresses and giving CEOs still this incredible moment to get together and have their own opportunity, in addition to being able to visit the Research Congress and all of the companies who come to that. It was kind of bringing all of those things together in the best of all worlds. So we're really excited about it. We'll see how it goes next year, but we're very, very pleased that Glasgow will be the home of it next year.
Fantastic. There's a lot of good stuff there that I'm certainly going to be listening to my own podcast and make notes. And I can assure all of the audience and everyone here as well, I don't have my phone taking AI notes. Every single thing in my social feed is a new AI app that you just put next to a call. I don't know if it's just me, but I'm getting tons of them just now. If there was something venues and destinations and national convention bureaus should stop doing, what would it be?
I don't know about something that I would tell bureaus to stop doing. I think especially in Europe, they're so focused on positive partnership. They do it well. I would say sometimes I would encourage bureaus to think long term and say, okay, we may have lost that meeting. We didn't get it for 2026, but we know that we're building this great partnership and we bet that they'll come in 2027 or 28. I think thinking longer term is terrific, but I don't know that I would give advice to a bureau on something to stop doing.
But that's good. That's promising if it's nothing immediately springs to mind. I think that's the way to the extent the convention bureaus and the industries maybe evolved over the last 10 years or so. And I think your point about thinking long term echoes Marie's point about thinking long term, including getting governments to think long term on how they can involve. Marie?
I think also for me, your challenge is my challenge. So I have so many volunteers roaming the earth, knocking on the door to have site inspections and talk about things, that I don't have full visibility into that activity. So if anything, I would ask for less transactional approach to, what may look like a nice sales opportunity, but keep a better dialogue at the business to business level so that we can partner on qualifying that lead for one, because I think sometimes it's not real. And the other is, I could help emphasize, the importance of it or the level of effort needed for the thing, because sometimes it could be small but quite important. And other times it could be something that, your money would be better spent elsewhere. And so having that kind of really transparent dialogue about what's going on, particularly with my organization, is so complicated. And someone once described it as a parade going by. So the volunteers present themselves as an organizer. We're running alongside them, trying to train them and get them acclimated. And just when they've got it, the next level of the parade comes in. So a lot of times we're dealing with first-time organizers or folks that don't have the full authority to do what they're doing. So I think a dialogue is really important to me. And then as your wonderful people ascend in their careers, I think the knowledge transfer to those who are coming in, but maybe we're not present in those early strategic dialogues about why we're doing things differently. I see it in my own world, folks coming in now to the events business that are sort of assuming the way certain things are done don't have the context of what the higher level business priority might be or the higher level strategy. So really taking time to explain a strategic approach to new hires, I think, is important.
Kathleen and Aileen, what is something that clients could do to get better outcomes? What might that be? Not Lauren and Marie, of course.
Well, exactly. I mean, Lauren and Marie are absolute seasoned professionals, so there's nothing out there in the book that they don't already know what to do. what I think is a lot of people could learn from Lauren and Marie, actually, and both of whom took a very open approach to working with venues and destinations. And I think that really would be my main point, actually, is be as transparent as possible, because the more transparency there is at the outset, the much better chance that we all have of getting to a position of success much quicker. So it's not so much about not doing something, it's just about, learn from people like Marie and Lauren and be open and really open-minded, actually, not just open about what you're, what you're sharing about your objectives, but I would say as well with both Lauren and Marie, there is such an open-mindedness about, potentially doing things slightly different in different destinations and different venues. And Lauren, we had, during the course of the discussions around Ocean Sciences meeting, etc., there was lots of things that we were, floating backwards and forwards and considering options, etc. And that's just a great process, actually. So allowing ideas to distill down and an opportunity to take something forward that perhaps hasn't been done before. We always love to break new ground if we can. And breaking new ground doesn't mean, like it's an earthquake breaking new ground. It's incremental. It's small steps. Sometimes are the things that just lead you just a little bit further down a path that equates to more success. And I keep coming back to the word success because that's what makes us all feel great about what we do. So
I think we'll have a lot of North American listeners and viewers to the podcast because we've got Marie and Lauren here. And I think that understanding of you can do something different if your meeting has always been held in the US or in one location. It can seem quite daunting to consider taking a step maybe into Europe, somewhere different. But I think Marie and Lauren have articulated the great benefits of being able to do that. You go where your members are, you grow new members, new opportunities, new financial partners, new research partners. So I think for any of the US listeners and viewers, it's to reach out and speak to those that are in venues and are in bureaus. We're here to help. And I think especially from a convention bureau perspective, that free and impartial support is maybe different to some of the bureaus in the US, but many, many destinations will have a free convention bureau. So if it's something that sounds attractive, something that sounds new, but maybe a little bit daunting, then I think first things is just to test the waters and reach out to key partners who can make it really, really enjoyable and hopefully very successful.
And I would urge clients all around the world to see their convention bureau, their national bureau, their venue absolutely as partners, because that's what we're here to do. We're here to make sure that we are your partners and you get the very best from everything from our venues and our cities.
I wanted to leave room for quite a heavy topic, so we've got a few minutes, but sustainability and climate change. I know you're all waiting for it. But it is the tension between our industry and climate change. And I think we'll all have different views, but we talk about our industry as being part of the solution, not the problem. Discuss. Who wants to go first? Are we part of the solution or part of the problem?
I can start. I think we're a bit of both. I think that we've made huge progress, and I don't want to belittle that progress, because I think especially organizations like EIC and PCMA have gone above and beyond to create real opportunities for learning and understanding. And we're working with some destinations that, my goodness, have absolutely adopted this, they report on it, they live it, and they breathe it. It is part of their strategy. And you see that at so many destinations, which is really heartening. I still think there's a gap, and I think that we're closing the gap, but we definitely need to pay attention to it. We have a lot of LEED certified organizations. We've got a lot of folks who are doing the right thing, but you can have a really unsustainable meeting in a LEED certified building. And it's up to the planners to understand how important it is to have a strategy that gets you there. And I'll use an example of, you can have a LEED certified building, and that building will say, you know what, you have to haul out your own freight. We don't throw away your freight. We won't landfill your freight because that impacts our numbers. We don't do that. well, how are you working with your exhibiting companies for them to understand what they're going to have to do to remove all of that freight at a giant trade show? And if they're just throwing it into trucks and taking it 3 states over to a landfill, you are not doing the right thing. You're not making that meaningful impact. You're not upholding that spirit, even though you can say, well, my LEED certification says we did great. So I think it's really more about partnership and strategy. It's become more about partnership and strategy and understanding and making sure that every organization has a strategy for what sustainability means to them, how they define it, what are their pillars of sustainability. If you've got one person in your organization that's doing that work, that's not sustainability. That's not going to make meaningful change. That's not going to get you there. So I think it's up to us as planners to honor the commitment that destinations have made and that many partners have made. And how can we work now as good partners? How can we bring that in and work with that great body of knowledge and make different decisions and kind of take that to the next level? So I think we've made a lot of progress. I think we still have a long ways to go.
I completely agree with what Lauren said, and I think very well stated. And I think the main point now, at least from a U.S. perspective, is that I guess, solving a problem, first you have to admit that you have a problem. I think we've all checked that box, okay? We have a problem. And now what are we going to do? There are going to be places and people and governments and trends that are at all varying voices and levels of control. But I agree with Lauren that it's really the professionals, the event professionals, that now need to assume the duty of driving this forward over time. And so, understanding what your strategy is as an individual, aligning with the strategy of your organization, and taking it upon yourself to do what you can. We're talking about huge infrastructures that are going to have to shift, and it's going to take a multi-party effort over time with buildings and airlines and cloud storage and the consumption of energy across the field. No one of us is going to be able to wave a wand and change the physical nature of some of these issues. But as we vote with our choices, as we have these dialogues with different entities, each of us can contribute to making progress. And that's the best we can do right now.
I think you both come at it from a very good angle. And one thing I observe is working in government is there is sometimes a tendency to assume that government has to signpost everything. And we saw this during the pandemic about the extent to which a place should be clean, or hotels and everything else. And I made it clear, a hotel knows how to clean a room. And it's no coincidence that all the big convention centers in the world became vaccination centers, because guess what? They know how to keep the venue clean. But I remember to your point, Marie, it's it's all the other sources of contribution to climate issues, including AI, which we're not going to talk about today. You'll be relieved to know. But the fact that an AI search generates far more use of carbon than sending somebody an email or a Google search, that's a future thing. But you mentioned airlines, the partnerships, the fact that a plane that I might get onto to go from Europe to Glasgow is probably 4 years newer, if not 10 years newer than my own car. Some of the Lufthansa planes, some of the British Airways planes, these are brand new, the newest, cleanest engines possible. There's a lot going on at once. Anything from Glasgow in this viewpoint?
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in first, Aileen. I'm sure you and I have very similar thoughts. I mean, yes, it's a tricky question. There is a tension, definitely, between our industry and climate change. I think I love Marie's comment about, we acknowledge, we just have to acknowledge that's the case. And to Lauren's point, we need to understand where we can best make a difference. And for us, this is our principal source of emissions is from our energy. So our focus is on our energy strategy and principally getting off gas. that's really important. That's where we can make the single biggest difference. Other areas of the venue, other areas of our operation, waste management, etc., we've already got them down to super low levels, and we have zero goes to landfill actually. But it's focusing on where you can make the biggest difference. And there's a tool out there, and I know Marie and Lauren are both aware of this. And Marie, I believe there's a session at your upcoming conference in Glasgow on this, the Net Zero Carbon Events Initiative. And the Net Zero Carbon Events Initiative is a global initiative for the industry, and one of the key bonuses or benefits that have come from net zero carbon events is that they have helped the industry carve up emissions. Who's responsible for what, roughly? And that's been a real help, because it was such a conundrum for us before we had this piece of work done by Net Zero Carbon Events to understand, well, who is responsible for which part of emissions? And it's not the gospel on it, but what Net Zero Carbon Events has done has given a strong indication of, okay, these emissions sit with the venue, and these emissions sit with the supply chain, and these emissions sit with the organiser. And that gives us all a bit of a North Star to work to. And I have found that although we had started our journey on our energy strategy and our sustainability strategy, it preceded Net Zero Carbon Events, what has been very comforting for me as a venue that's really focused on this subject matter is that actually what we're doing completely aligns with the way that they've split up, suggested that emissions are carved up, and we're on the right track because we are focusing on our energy. So I think people are always going to want to meet. I fundamentally think it wouldn't be right that the industry had its hands tied behind its back. I talk about the industry, and I know people have different views as to whether we're an industry or not, but for people organising events, we're really tying the hands behind the back of the brilliant scientists, the brilliant minds that coming together fundamentally can make the changes that will help us overcome the problems that we are facing in the next 20 to 30 years. So I think, yes, we are part of the problem, but we are absolutely at the forefront of the solution, and the solution, the benefits that from developing the solutions, in my view, far outweigh at this moment in time the potential cost. We have to keep the brilliant minds coming together to develop the science and the technology, and clean tech. We have IEEE Clean Tech coming up in just 4 weeks' time, all about how do we get cleaner in everything that we do, and the only way that we can really advance all of that is through bringing the brilliant minds together. So we need to embrace that, but do the very best that we can across every event to ensure that we are keeping emissions to a minimum.
Aileen?
Yeah, I love the pragmatic and solution-focused discussion in the conversation today, that everyone has acknowledged and looked to their own organisations and their own teams to be at the forefront of this, and really looking at, if we don't measure, then how do we manage? And it's getting back to the practicalities that everyone on the podcast today has talked about, is looking at your own area and how can you make a difference. And I think as a destination, we were the first UK city to join the Global Destination Index and Sustainability Index, and it's been able to look at the journey a destination can be on. And there's only so much as a convention bureau we can do, but we can nudge and we can encourage our hotels, the restaurants, our city to start measuring, and then we can say, have we done something better? And I know Kathleen led that sustainability strategy for the SEC, and a fantastic job, and an absolute leader in the field for convention centres globally. So absolutely hats off to Kathleen and the team for being able to lead the way, and it makes it easier because then others can follow. And I think that's a good ways that we share these things, we share the ideas, and that helps us all get better.
I'd like to jump in and make a connection. One of the things that I think about strategically is that at any time in the not too distant future, there could be restrictions on travel related to sustainability. Or it could come from an executive order that is just too cumbersome for us to overcome. I personally think it's important to have international meetings and international relationships on the books. You don't want to get started on that the day that these inevitabilities come to pass. So, even for some of our most lucrative and successful conferences, we are standing up regional instances of those because we find that it doesn't really cannibalize our big events, and it gives us a footprint to grow on. Should travel across these events become more difficult than it is today? So I think that's another way to think about even sustainability. Rather than have everybody come to the US, could you have some regional things which would lessen the impact of each individual? So that's just food for thought.
I agree with Marie. I think that access is part of sustainability. We've actually gone back into virtual and including virtual attendees in our meetings and doing that in a really well-designed way, not to eliminate our in-person meetings, but to grow our in-person meetings and to make sure that if you can't travel because of carbon or cost or whatever that is, that you still have a way to access your community. It's not going to ever cannibalize our meetings. But it might give somebody who says, you know what, I had my funding cut. I couldn't come. I couldn't participate. We're already seeing limits on people's ability to travel because of carbon. Our European colleagues are well versed, and even some of our Asian colleagues. So keep that access open in whatever design format works for you. But we are not going to suddenly go back and exclude people. We really want to make sure that anyone has the ability to participate if they would like to in a way that is authentic and meaningful to them.
Superb.
Yeah, great comments. Lots to think about there.
Well, I think we will draw this to a close. Thank you very, very much for all your insights. It's been fascinating for me sitting here in this chair, hearing everyone. And I think there's an awful lot we just heard from Lauren and Marie that we'll be wanting to listen back to when we see the final version. And I hope our audience will enjoy these observations and comments too, and hopefully find it enjoyable. So with that, I'm going to wrap this SEC podcast. Thank you very much for your time, Marie and Lauren.
Thank you. My pleasure. Thank you.
And thank you for including us.
And Aileen and Kathleen especially, thank you for asking me to chair this, host this, whatever the expression is. Thank you very much.
Thank you for agreeing.
Thank you very much, everyone.